What is going on, everybody? Make sure we are streaming. But the question is, how's it going out? How's it going, everybody? I forgot to check if this there we go. Okay. All right. What's going on, everybody? Make sure that we're streaming. Yep, we are. Welcome to the Just Gonna Say It podcast, and welcome to our Tuesday afternoon live stream. We thank you all for coming and hanging out with us every Tuesday, because that's kind of what we do here on the old YouTubes, talking about guitar stuff and hanging out. I got an interesting subject for you today. We're going to talk about the reason your guitar sucks. And it kind of applies to everybody. And, we're constantly chasing, tone. We're constantly chasing the perfect setup. We're constantly chasing all these things, right? And we're doing mods, and we're finding out that a guitar needs a particular fix. You buy a guitar and you go into the Facebook group of your choice, and everybody's like, well, you automatically need to do these 5 things. Otherwise this guitar, sucks, And so we're going to talk about that, where all that kind of stuff comes from. And maybe not about specific, and we can actually, if you have questions about any of this stuff, get in the comments and ask a guitar question, because it's probably going to fall under this category somehow. Before we do that, do me a favor, hit the like button and the subscribe button, because we talk about guitar stuff every day. I actually already shot a video for tomorrow. It's already on Patreon. You'll see it. We got a video coming on Thursday. We got a live stream coming on Thursday. We got a video coming on Friday. We got all kind of stuff going. If you want to ask a question, you're welcome to do that. You can also use a super chat. You can go to DylanTalksTone at that little scanny thing right there, and you can buy pickups and guitar parts and stuff, because that is actually what supports us. That's how we make a living. It is not by how many people watch our podcasts. So that's that. Yeah, super cool. Say hello in the chat if you are also, if you're hanging out. That's a cool thing to do. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit. I'll tell you the inspiration for the idea for this subject today. I did a video the other day, and it talked about acoustic guitar setup, right? And basically, if you buy a Martin guitar, okay, it's kind of been this way since the 1800s, that kind of thing. Well, it depends. They kind of changed how they set their necks just a little bit, but so since forever, when you buy a very traditional acoustic guitar, Gibsons are the same way. Breedloves are the same way. Martins are the same way. They come with a pretty high saddle, and it's because it's not an adjustable piece, right? It's because you have to actually file it to get it to the height that you want. So they make them too tall so that you can adjust them down. And somebody said, well, and there's a whole bunch of people that have made comments about, well, the real problem is you have to have the neck reset. No, that is not the case. Okay. And well, that guitar shouldn't be designed like that because blah, 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 like coming up with all these excuses why I'm not going to buy a Martin because I'm broke. Actually, the guitar is fine. It's totally fine. And it got me thinking about all kinds of guitar designs that are not good. And this is not specifically about any brand. This is about guitar design in general. There are inherent imperfections to the instrument, okay, that cause us to chase things. I would imagine right now, and I've not done this, I should do this. Actually, if you could have a guitar designed, like a perfect guitar that had all the problems fixed, and didn't have any of the inherent issues that you have with the normal traditional designs that we know and love, what that instrument would look like, I would imagine that it would be different, because very different, because just inherent to the way the guitar works, a lot of these things make us, chase the issue. Let's see. Hey, Dylan, have you ever tried using Stringjoy 8020s? And why do you prefer the Foxwood 13s? I found 12s as my sweet spot. I put 13s on my acoustics because I like I like heavier strings on an acoustic. That's that. The 8020s are great, but the Foxwoods are coated, and there is not very often a coated string that I like, but I really like their coated strings. They last a long time. They sound great. They don't get fuzzy. They're really cool. That's why I have chosen those. So when we start to think about imperfect guitar designs, first of all, we could just talk about the material, right? The perfect guitar would not be made of wood. It wouldn't. Imperfect is wood. Here's why. Because if we want to talk about tone, if we want to talk about integrity of build, if we want to talk about weight, if we want to talk about balance, wood is very imperfect at all of those things, right? The density is uneven. The hardness is uneven, which are two different things. Everything about it, it's susceptible to all kinds of environmental issues. It is not inherently stable. There are different woods that take different machining tasks differently, right? Like, it's just a completely imperfect piece of wood. And since it's organic, even within species, they're never going to be the same. Like it's just there's a whole bunch of reasons why wood actually doesn't make sense for an electric guitar, but it's just, that's the way we've been doing it. So that's the way we do it. And people get super stoked about that stuff. And it's just how it is, right? It means that there's going to be inconsistencies from instrument to instrument, and also within a particular instrument. So you're going to have that. The thing is that wood is what we've made guitars from the very beginning. So therefore it's inherent in the DNA of the instrument that it be wood. So it's really hard for us, myself included, in most cases, to step away from that as a material. We like it. It's cool, but we have to accept the imperfections that come along with it. We have to accept just the inherent limitations of it as a material, because there are, and here's the thing is, that's the way it was designed, but that's not the way it has to be now, because there are, we have made strides in material sciences that have gotten us much further. So we could change that if we wanted to, but I think as a community, I think you would agree that we've decided not to. We like it, right? We're going to pretty much, I would imagine, until somebody tells us you have to make guitars out of something else because you're not allowed to use wood anymore, which I doubt that'll ever happen. But until then, we're going to keep using it because it's cool. We like it. Everybody likes it, even though we have to accept its imperfections. There's a lot of guitar specifications that, by their design, you have to remember that, for example, the electric guitar was an application of an instrument from an acoustic one. But in making an electric guitar, they not only, there's not very much that crosses over. Okay. So on an acoustic instruments are percussive instruments, where an electric guitar is not, right? It is an electric transducer. So you're taking kinetic energy and you're turning it into electricity. So the way you do that is different. So the construction is completely different. The way you use the guitar is completely different. So your fretboard radiuses are different. Your neck profiles are different. Everything is different, right? You could have, I suppose, an electric guitar that looked and felt and worked exactly like an acoustic guitar, but it wouldn't sound the same. right? Um, but doing that meant that early electric guitars were very acousticy. Okay. So their neck profiles, their fret sizes were very small. All of that stuff was very old fashioned, and it was very of the time. And then we have sort of adopted that as this is the way it should be because vintage specs, when in reality, that stuff is the worst. So I think a lot of people, myself included, are like, you know what? Tiny frets from the 50s suck. Bigger frets, they're better, right? Like that's the way I feel anyway. And you might not. That's totally an opinion. The way we finish a guitar, nitrocellulose versus any of the modern coatings that we have now, there's no comparison when it comes to ease of application, the way they work. The only thing that is better, quote unquote better, the only thing that people like more practically is the way nitrocellulose ages. Otherwise, it's a useless finish anymore. So because material sciences, again, have progressed. But we want that imperfection. We want the fact that it's not good. Nitrocellulose is actually terrible as a coating, but we want it because it's imperfect. One of the other vintage specs that we talk about all that when you're like, "Ooh, this is a cool old guitar," single action truss rod. They're not even that great. A modern double action truss rod is way better. Way better. You can be much more precise with the adjustment of a neck, right? Like all these things, the modern stuff is better. Like everything these days, basically, is better. From Happy Good Thing, would you prefer carbon fiber bodies, aluminum, or etc.? I don't care. Honestly, it wouldn't matter to me one way or another. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Happy Good Thing. I would say I would definitely be interested in carbon fiber because I think it's cool as a material. I have a carbon fiber acoustic guitar right here, and I love it. I play it all the time. As an electric guitar, so carbon fiber is interesting, and I wouldn't say that as a weight is a thing. So you want weight. You want I personally want an electric guitar to be like 6.5 pounds, right? If you make it out of solid carbon fiber, it will be heavier than that. Therefore, then you would have to make it chambered and hollow, and then it would feel different, and it would basically be a semi-hollow guitar. So I don't know that carbon fiber is the right material. I love the way it looks. I love it as an idea, but carbon fiber that's 2 inches thick is pretty heavy. So I don't know. I think this is my thought off the top of my head, is just kind of thinking out loud here, is some sort of synthetic material that has a controllable density, probably 3D printed, where you could control how heavy it was per its mass and control its density, right? And then be able to machine it and then be able to finish it, right? Because a lot of 3D printed stuff, 3D printing is getting way better. It's still, you want to make sure that I personally would want to make sure it was finished. If I could 3D print a Telecaster and then put a nice finish on it, and you didn't even know that it was 3D printed because it weighed the right amount and it felt, you know what I mean? Then I wouldn't care. So I think 3D printing might be the way. The problem is that 3D printing is very slow. So in a production environment, I don't know that would work. So that's an interesting. Do they make a polybonded styrofoam? Yeah. See, there's all kinds of synthetic stuff like that. When you think about like the various cores that they use for like aircraft wings and all kinds of stuff, there's all kinds of neat stuff, but you also have to think about the scalability of it, right? So, you know, if the Cortec factory in Indonesia is making, what did they say on that video that Phil did? It's thousands of guitars a month, right? 1 million a year. That means that you need to be able to machine a body, like every 12 minutes or something. So the production thing / the cost thing, the scalability part of it has to be there. And maybe wood is still the thing because of that. Maybe wood is the reason. Maybe that's the reason wood is still a thing, because we haven't figured out something to scale at that size. Let's see here real quick. I'm just going to go back and look through some of these. My guitar is microphonic. Why? Because your pickups are either junk or have become microphonic and they need to be wax potted. Hang on one second. I'm just going through. A good setup and a good piece of wood is almost all you need. No, not really. You need more than that. Let's see. Hang on. I'm going through these comments real quick. Would you prefer carbon? Okay. Carbon fiber. We got that one because you put it in a super chat. Thank you for doing that. Speaking of frets, do you think that more than $1,600 not having stainless steel frets is kind of planned obsolescence? It's luthiers that earn the refret money, though. No, I don't think you should put no. Stainless steel frets. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're not going to be able to tell me the answer. What kind of stainless steel? What kind of stainless steel? Here's the reason. Okay. Now I'm a knife collector. There's probably 100 knives over there. Okay. This is stainless steel, right? What else do I have in my pockets? Maybe I don't have anything else in my pockets right now. That's titanium. I could grab that Buck 110 right over there, and it's stainless steel too, but it's not the same stainless steel as this, right? Stainless steel frets are not all created equal for two reasons. One, first of all, cheap stainless steel is barely harder on the Rockwell scale than nickel. Nickel's actually very hard. So when you look at the Rockwell, it's not the Rockwell scale actually for this. It's something, it's called the, I forget what it's called. Anyways, I did a bunch of research on this, and I actually have a bunch of notes on it because I want to do a video about it. But the bottom line is this: cheap stainless steel is barely better than nickel. Okay. It's barely harder. So there's no point in it. One, because it's not any better, really. It's like 2 points harder. Number one. Number two, it's way harder to install. It's way harder to machine, and it's way harder to get right. Here's the thing. If you go to your local guy and you have stainless steel frets put on your guitar and he's never done it before, they will suck. It's a completely different skill set. So just because Harley Minton can put some stainless steel frets on some cheap ass guitars doesn't mean that they're good. Okay. So basically they're barely stainless. Okay. D2 steel, for example, is a tool steel. It's kinda stainless. Right? What else? Basically, if you put a little bit of chromium in some nickel, you can call it stainless. So it doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to be good to be called stainless. You can add a little chromium and a little vanadium, and boom, now it's technically stainless. But it doesn't mean anything. It just means it's going to rust less. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be as hard or last as long. So if you're going to go to a $5,000 guitar and you're going to say, yo, on my custom shop, whatever, I want you to put stainless steel frets in it, and they use, Dunlop, whatever, blah, 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 blah. That's like real stainless. I think it's 304. I have it written down. I don't want to speak to what stainless it is because I did a bunch of research and I finally found out. But there's cheap stainless and there's good stainless. So when you say the guitar doesn't have a, $1,600 guitar should have stainless steel frets in it, well, then what you need to do is you need to find out what kind it is. You need to find out, and you won't because they won't tell you. And you need to understand how long it takes, how many hours extra it takes, and how many tools you go through to do it at scale. This will make the guitar more than $1,600. Okay, so that's why. Yeah. Hang on, let me go down. I do notice seating issues with stainless steel frets more often. That's because they're so hard on cheap guitars. They don't actually do it right. They don't. It's got to be done right. Otherwise, it's not all the way down and it doesn't bend. So the thing about stainless steel frets is it's very, very, very critical to pre-arc them. You do it with nickel frets too, but it's even more critical with stainless frets to pre-arc them to the radius. And if the fretboard is not perfect and or the frets are not radiused perfectly, then you will have that problem. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Dylan, let's find a way to make guitars boring and thoroughly understand unique. So it's interesting that you say that. So personally, I don't think that guitars need to be the same, right? And this is what I want to talk about. Because you have the person who says, I don't want the guitar to be the same. But then that same person, and I'm not saying it's you, but I've seen it many times, okay? That same person will be like, oh, but this tone would. Okay, so what you're saying is you want that guitar to be the same as that one, so that's why you pick the same tone wood, even though they can't be the same because it's wood? Right? Oh, I have to have, I only can play this size of frets. I'm a Tele guy. I'm a Strat guy. I only play Gibsons. I only play Fenders. I can only play a fat neck. I can only play a skinny neck. I can only play big frets. I can only play skinny frets. I only play guitars with stainless steel frets. I won't even buy a guitar if it doesn't have, right? So people are like, I don't want all my guitars to be the same, but then when you spec a guitar, you want them all the same. What the heck? That's what I'm saying. This is why we're having this conversation. I think it's really important to think about it. The property that makes stainless steel last is toughness, not hardness. So, okay. Yes and no. Yes and no. It's just a human interface device for making the noise. You know what? That's a great point. That is a great point. And so that, to me, that's the most important thing, is how you interface with the guitar. That's why everybody has different stuff. That's why we all want different guitars, right? I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. I like that concept. I think it might be 304. I have a note. Let me see if I have a note on it really quick. Here, hang on. I have a note on it. Okay, so cheap stainless is roughly 10%, 8 to 10% harder than nickel. When it comes to so cheap stainless frets could be 304 or 316, and really good stainless steel frets is 17.4. Okay, so 17.4 is actually a really hard stainless. It's really tough. It's very, very good. For this, it's not quite a tool steel, but it's close. 304 stainless is basically, think cheap silverware in your, like if you go to, TJ Maxx and you buy a set of silverware for, super cheap, or you go to Home Depot and you buy a, like $1.99 pack of stainless steel screws. Those are typically 304 or 316. So, for example, it's not been hardened. It's very soft. It's actually very soft. We could take some 304 stainless right now and scratch it. I have some. I bought a bunch because I'm playing with it on the laser, and it's very, very soft. And so, yeah, so 17 pH is very hard. It's about twice as hard as 304 or 316. But it's also very much more expensive, and it's very hard to use. So there is that. So let's talk about a couple other things that I think are kind of funny. Well, here, let's go down through. I want to make sure that I don't miss any. Super chat. Thank you. Happy good thing. I played a hollow aluminum guitar from France at a NAMM, and it was terrific. As you're knowledgeable, what are your optimal guitar materials? I've played a bunch of aluminum stuff. I think it's cool. I tell you what I don't like about aluminum. I think it's neat. I really do. And I actually have an aluminum guitar, but it's made out of sheets of aluminum so you can feel it more. The thing about aluminum that's kind of tough is we all like to feel the guitar, right? Whether that's right or wrong, because it's kind of wrong, because it's sort of counterintuitive to sustain, but we like to feel the guitar vibrate in our lap. Aluminum doesn't do that as much because the way aluminum works, even for other things, for, machining and stuff, is it doesn't have any memory. So it doesn't really spring, if that makes sense. And so it doesn't feel lively, in my opinion, when you play it. It's really cool, though, and I think it's a really good idea to use it. I think it's awesome. I love that aluminum necks are neat and stuff. The stuff's really cool, but it just takes on a completely different feel, if that makes sense. Yeah. Let's see. High carbon stainless steel can be hardened. Yeah, but you're not going to harden frets. So I understand what you're saying, but you're not going to, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So cold. Yes, that's another thing, is it takes a while to warm up to you when you're playing. Like when you pick up a guitar and you play it, it is cold, physically cold. The carbon fiber stuff's kind of like that too. So I have McPherson carbon fiber acoustics, and when you first pick it up, you're like, oh, this is like, it doesn't feel warm like wood does. It doesn't hold the room temperature like wood does, if that makes sense. But it's much faster than aluminum. You can play for 5 minutes and you forget, you forget the material you're playing after about 5 minutes. And so I really, really like that. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other specifications that people get kind of hung up on. Well, let's talk about wood a little bit more. So old growth wood, people talk about, oh, this guitar is better because old growth. Honestly, it's just what was available. Most of the materials that stuff was available when it became the standard was just availability. Was it old growth? Yeah, sure, it was, because that's what was there. But here's the thing. The reason it was important in the olden days, for those of you that care about it, is because the curing and drying processes that they had back then were not what they are now. So the wood had to come out of the ground, like you had to cut the tree down and it had to basically be already good. Okay. Otherwise, it wouldn't be stable. Otherwise, you would fight it, right? So the old growth wood was more stable as it came out of the ground. More important to that is how you process the wood after you cut it. So it depends on how you cut it. So if you cut it quarter sawn or flat sawn, if you flat saw it correctly, then you can kind of like fake that it's quarter sawn, which a lot of people do, and it's just as good. There's a whole thing about milling that comes into that, how you cut the wood effectively. That's a thing. And then like Paul Reed Smith, for example, is very, 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 very careful about how they process their wood before they make it into a guitar. And they do it even on their SE stuff. We just saw a video about that recently, right? And so all of the processing of the wood after it comes out of the ground after it is milled is probably at this point in 2025 more important than whether it was old growth or not. It has to do with the technology that was available then versus the technology available now. And so we can control a lot of that more than we could then. So those are kind of just buzzwords that we don't really care about because, a well-seasoned modern piece of wood that's done properly, processed properly after it's been milled, or before it's been milled, is a better piece of wood than a poorly, old-fashioned processed piece of old growth wood. So, those are all those kind of things that people bring up because it's just like, well, we've done it that way all the whole time, but it's not actually that good. There's better ways now. Where we get materials from is better now. How it's processed, all that stuff is way, way, way better. The way we manufacture guitars now is much more consistent, but it's also not just about consistency, but like, for example, if you go and watch, who was it? I think Elderly Instruments on YouTube just recently did a tour of Martin. And one of the things they showed was they could not do this for a long time because they did not have the right CNC machine to do it. They did not have the right. It took them a while to get it right, and not get it right, but to perfect this particular manufacturing process. And they changed the dovetail joint on their neck, right? So the way the dovetail, it's a compound dovetail, but it's different than the old one. And the way they fit the neck to the guitar now is different. And it does two things. It makes it faster and easier, but it also makes it better. It actually is tighter. It fits better, which is going to be better tone, going to be better construction, going to be better all the things. But they couldn't do it before because the machine that they had to do it by hand versus there was these compound angles and stuff that they can do now with a machine that makes it possible. So machining techniques, manufacturing techniques are making better guitars. They are better. Do they have less soul because they were made? No. They're better. It's just kind of a fact that it is a fact that the guitars are better than they used to be. Of course, nostalgia keeps us from thinking those things are right. I wonder how many 200-year-old wood instruments still exist in playing condition. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Probably depends. And it depends more on the care of them afterwards than it does on what they're made of, right? So any wood, it doesn't matter what it is, any wood is going to come apart. Glue joints are going to break, all that kind of stuff if the environment that the guitar or the instrument is kept in is not good. Yeah. Super, super key. Those sketchy Chinese factories make pretty decent guitars. I suppose. Yeah, I suppose. Here's where you're going to run into. So a lot of those sketchy Chinese factories, though, they don't age the wood the same way. They don't take the care, like a $300 guitar that you find on Amazon or any of your Fireflies and all that stuff. All that junk's going to be made out of 5 different pieces of wood instead of 2 or 3. It's all going to not grain match. It's all going to be different weights of wood. You're going to have for example, you'll have 5 different, because I've taken these apart and looked. You'll have 5 different pieces of wood to make a body of a Firefly guitar, for example. And when you look at them, you'll notice that the wood didn't come from the same part of the tree even, right? So it's super inconsistent all the way across. Now, you're going to be like, yeah, but I thought you said tone wood's not a thing. It's not. Glue integrity is, though. So if you take for example, you can take a softwood and a hardwood and glue them together, and they'll pull apart because they expand and contract differently. So if you take 2 wildly varying densities of wood and try to glue them together, the stability of that is not going to be as good as if it actually matched. So those are the kinds of things. Those cheap guitars are disposable pieces. You know, they're not meant. And I think that's something that you need to think about when you buy that stuff is, you are buying, when you buy a $300 Chinese guitar, okay, you're buying like a $65 printer. You know what I mean? Like when it runs out of toner the first time, you might as well just throw it away. It is a disposable piece where any of the more legacy stuff that actually they put some time and some effort into, and it's just not a cog, is meant to be a guitar that you're going to keep for a long time. Now, you may keep a cheap guitar for a long time, but I will guarantee you that if you keep that guitar for 40 years in your closet and you pull it out, it will look very similar to one of those 40-year-old Russian or Japanese, like Teiscos or any of the old Italian stuff that wasn't made very well, where you have to literally do a bunch of work to get the guitar back to playable again. That will be much more likely on one of those very inexpensive guitars. They are disposable pieces, which is fine if that's what you want, but just understand that you're not getting a guitar that's just as good as something else. You're getting a cheap thing that is a disposable piece, right? Which is totally cool. I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. That, you know. Let's see. There are many variations of pickups. Please talk about those. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's tons of them. What do you want to know? We know lots of stuff about pickups around here. That's what we do. Yeah, that's what we do. Because pickups are the thing. Hi from Germany. Hello. Let's see. They are fun to work on. Yeah, well, you're going to work on them a bunch. That is for sure. And okay, so the other thing we'll talk about is like, even the way you work on a guitar. Okay. So, having Bob, your guy that you spend $200 and your local guy who thinks he knows how to do frets versus having it plecked, after a fret job, that's a different thing, right? Precision is a thing. And people will say, well, I want the imperfection. Otherwise, the guitar doesn't have any soul. Well, it doesn't work. The guitar has to work. So the frets have to be flat. They have to be polished. You know, they have to be good. The guitar has to be good. Can you have imperfections, scratches and dings and bumps and stuff like that? Yeah, for sure. But loose neck pockets, which used to be the norm, bad neck joints, all that stuff. Bone nuts, for example, are actually kind of terrible when it really comes down to it and what the job of a bone nut is. They're pretty terrible. I think I've told this story many times before, but for those of you that are new to the channel, when we were building guitars pretty consistently here, we were doing, probably building 2 or 3 a month. And, here at DylanTalksTone, we had a line that we were doing. We're probably doing 2 or 3 a month. And I would buy nuts, right? I'd buy electric guitar nuts, usually the Fender style. And we would buy them in like I don't remember, were they 50 or 100 that I would buy them in, like a little bundle of them, right? And they would be bleached cowbone, right? And you would hold them up to the light and they would be so inconsistent that if you picked an inconsistent one, you could actually break it while you were filing it. Like they were so bad. And I mean, these were from reputable vendors. But what I'm about to tell you is there was a certain level of just throwaway. And it was probably about 30%. 30% to 50%. That you just throw the nut away because you just wouldn't want to use it in a guitar. So you'd have to buy a bunch of them, pick through them and get a good one and throw the rest away. You don't have to do that with Tusk. You don't have to do that with any of that graphite stuff. You don't have to do that. And it actually does a better job of transferring energy to the body of a guitar, or to the neck of a guitar, or to, however you want to say it. Bone is not actually a good material, but it's what we had, right? We don't use ivory on keys on keyboards anymore, and I don't know why we still use bone for nuts, except for people think it's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just little things like that. It's more of a philosophical difference than it is a practical one. I mean, it's very easy to look at this and go, geez, the durometer of this material is inconsistent from this side to this side. And the whole point of having this nut is to have a consistent hardness from this side to this side, so I can transfer energy from here to here. How come it doesn't do that? You just throw it away and you get a new piece. Okay, well, maybe this one's a little better. You can hold it up to the light and see it. Where Tusk is like awesome out of the box, no matter what. It's all the same because it's a synthetic material. And it lubricates just as good, and etc. Let's see. We got a super chat from Tazzy Tim. DOH finally made it. I don't exactly know what that means, but awesome. We hate $80 printers. Those $60 printers don't use up the new ink a cartridge before it stops printing. And I guess that's what I'm getting at is, so, okay. And this is another concept about the cheap guitar. Okay. Do you buy the same brand of printer again when that one fails you? Sometimes you don't have a choice because it's all that's available, right? Just like a guitar. Sometimes it's all we have a budget for. It's all, right? Why do you buy a product that is iffy on quality, that is iffy on longevity, that is iffy on customer service, that is iffy on any kind of reliability, and then think it's cool, and then encourage your friends to do it? For some reason, we do that with guitars. I don't know why we do, because we don't do it with everything else. If I buy something crappy, I don't tell all my friends to go get one. I'm going to start a Facebook group. It's going to be crappy stuff that you should buy. Makes no sense. But we have insert cheap guitar brand here Facebook group, where everybody's like, you should get this guitar. You're going to have to work on it for 3 days before you can play it, but you should get one. We don't do that with printers. Or we don't do that with, if this thing's got less than 4.5 stars on Amazon, I don't buy it. You know what I mean? Like if it's, if I'm buying I don't know what, it doesn't matter. Pencil sharpener, who cares? If it's got less than 4.5 stars, I ain't buying it because there's probably a better one. I don't know why we do that with guitars. It's weird. Makes no sense to me. Do you think there'll be a process to do a neural net training on pickups so that one could load a mod and completely revoice it to anything else? I guess that would be pretty straightforward. So there are some things that are happening in post for that. Leslie and I were just talking about this yesterday. I heard this in a podcast the other day where if you have to move a physical item around, AI can't really do that yet, right? So maybe it will at some point. If you're moving electrons around, which is what I do, that's a thing. But you got to remember, we're still taking a physical motion and turning it into electrons, right? So the kinetic energy is still a thing. So I think for now we're safe. I also think that somebody mentioned it earlier. We don't want everything to be all the same, and we don't want everything to be completely like lose all feeling. I really hope, and this is just my hope. I've been thinking about this a lot. My hope is that you all and me, all of us, will never give up the stuff that we're interested in that is like doing a real thing. You know what I mean? So playing a guitar is really cool. And the community surrounding it and the people surrounding it and the creative around it and the what it does for me personally, like when I was playing this morning, preparing for a video for later this week, and I was playing and I was like, this is so fun. Just alone in a room by myself, just really with headphones on actually. And I was like getting lost in it. It was really fun. And I really hope that doesn't get old for people. And I hope that in a world where everything is becoming more AI generated and more, because I use AI a lot. I use it a lot. It's a very excellent tool for taking care of mundane tasks that I don't want to take care of, right? That I would rather just that mundane admin things, sorting and charts and all that kind of stuff is very helpful for me. It has really saved me a lot of time in my business. But it has not and will not, for what we do, replace any humans because we still need human stuff. So I love that. So I hope that stays the same for all of this stuff. I hope that we still enjoy doing the thing that is, I like sharpening a knife. I like setting up a guitar. I like putting pickups in a guitar. I like playing the guitar. I hope those things don't go away. They're not going to go away from me. Even if it just becomes like a vintage collection sort of a thing. But I hope it stays that way. Yeah. Sometimes those cheap guitars are the only way that you can get certain specs and looks without spending a ton of money. No, I agree. There is a place for them. There is definitely a place for them. I just want people to be very honest with each other and with themselves about what they're buying. I don't care. You can buy whatever guitar you want. In fact, we have a video coming out tomorrow that talks about that. Like, just don't worry about it. Buy whatever one you want. But make sure it's the guitar that you want, not the guitar that you're settling for. If you really want it, get it. If you're settling for it and then now you're going to try to like convince yourself and all your friends that it's just as good as something else because blah, 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 blah. And get into that whole conversation. It's just not good for the community either. Right. We're all tired. Everybody is, I think, tired of this $200 guitar versus a custom shop Gibson comparisons. Those are stupid because we know they're not. In our heart of hearts, we know they're not. But for some reason, people want to keep doing that stuff. So I don't mind because, here's the other thing. We sell upgrade parts. I hope that you have a bunch of cheap guitars that you want to put pickups in because it's fun. That's how I make a living. That's what we do, right? I just want you to be honest with yourself and honest with your friends and the people that you talk to in Facebook groups and stuff about what you're actually buying. Just as long as you know, it's totally fine. As long as you really get it, it's totally fine. I totally dig it. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. Yeah, fun conversation today. Thanks for coming and hanging out and talking about this stuff. We have another video tomorrow. Deer antler is awesome for nut and bridge material. The problem with it is you got to make sure, you have to make sure with a deer antler that you have a huge one. Because deer antler, we have a bunch of it around here because we have our dogs chew on them. I've looked at it a bunch because we have lots of it. We have tons of it around. It's the same problem with density. Deer antler is very spongy. Very spongy. It's more spongy than cow bone. So I would actually say that it's probably not as good. It's pretty. It's neat. But yeah, I wouldn't use it. Anyway, cool, man. Thanks for hanging out, you guys. This was really fun. I hope you have a good Tuesday. And let's see here. Let's take one more. Although wood may not affect tone, do you think a guitar's look or the wood used in its fretboard influences how the playable music, perhaps even making the same guitar sound different? Okay, so you just, to me, You just hit the nail on the head. We talked about it earlier, how the human being interacts with the instrument. That is the biggest thing, right? That is what makes me sound different than you. If me and you could both pick up the same guitar and we would sound completely differently, right? It's also why Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani or anybody who's really, 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 really good could pick up a cheap guitar and they would still sound like them, because it's how they interact with the instrument. So I personally play rosewood fretboards, not maple ones, because I like how they feel and it makes it, I am more efficient on a rosewood fretboard, right? Because I interact with it differently than maple. I don't interact well with maple. You might be completely the opposite. So yes, in that respect, the tone can change because you play the guitar differently. If there is a feature of a guitar that makes you play it differently, then the tone's changing, obviously, right? Yeah. Makes total sense. Cool, man. You guys, this is super fun. Thanks for hanging out. Well, I guess we will see you tomorrow, because we got another video coming out tomorrow at 4 o'clock.